Does it matter?
Not really.
All right, tell me your story.
But yeah, so this is the problem with expectations. And when we put expectations on ourselves and on other people. Now, how's that? I'm putting expectations on people and they're not even aware that I have these expectations on them. So I go into Thanksgiving with all these thoughts in my head about how things will be. And of course, that's not what happened because nobody else is feeling the exact same as me. So my kids didn't want to do things how I wanted to do them. And I just started like a little bit upset, right? Like normally things that I don't normally get upset about, I kind of just flow with it. I was feeling everything. Everything was irritating me already. So I was like primed for this experience of like getting really triggered up and then like, spreading that energy. So yeah, so I was getting upset at everybody and starting to yell. And I noticed as I'm getting angry and starting to yell and get angry about things that wouldn't normally upset me, little tiny things like, oh, this hit the floor, or like the tea towel I just got, out of the laundry and I put it down and I'm just ready to use this beautiful tea towel and it's on the floor and somebody's stepping on it. And I'm like, that was a minute, but what does that even matter? But not even to judge myself. But yeah, I was like so triggered. So then yelling about that probably for a good 5 minutes. And then I'm like, okay, that's enough about the tea towel. So then it just went on like that. And it kind of like almost like tissue paper, just little layers, little thin layers of little irritating things. And then finally, and of course my 12-year-old, sweet, loving 12-year-old says one thing and I bubble over on her. And she got the brunt of me not taking care of my own self, not having self-compassion for my own self, judging myself, judging everyone else from my own view, expecting everybody to, understand what I'm going through. And then I took it out on her. I guess in the moment, I must have thought I would feel better for it or I wouldn't have done it. So that was not the case. Instead, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is the celebration once a year where we celebrate gratitude and Thanksgiving and all this beautiful stuff. And am I being grateful right now? What am I doing? So yeah, it was very eye-opening for me that I could still, get nice and riled up. And what a perfect time when your family's all right there.
No, but I mean, if if it was in reverse, right, you'd kind of tell me you're kind of judging yourself and at least you caught it, right? It might not have been at the second that you wanted to, but you still caught it and you were able to, I won't say rectify it, but you were able to acknowledge it and kind of just, take that, what's the word? Well, using my language, kind of just take kind of the negative energy out of it and kind of just use it to become the person that you want to be. You're not perfect. Sorry to say,
Right?
So I'm at the end of the day, things happen and things are going to continue to happen at least, best case scenario, you guys were all still together on a day that, some people don't have their families and, some people would I'm sure, honestly, that a lot of people won't even remember it. You guys probably won't even remember it tomorrow. You guys will be arguing over something new.
That's right.
Right?
I know. I used to say that to my kids, a year from now, you won't remember this, but you're right. A day from now, you won't remember this.
Right?
Yeah, it was just little slights. And of course, if you think about it, the root cause of all my upset was nobody else. It was something had nothing to do with anybody. But that's what we do. When somebody is upset with us, we always take it on. Oh, this has to do with me. So here my kids are thinking, oh, wow, we're upsetting mom so much. But you're not. I'm allowing myself to be upset. I'm choosing this. I'm really upset right now. And I'm allowing myself to get triggered by everything. That was completely, a choice to do that in a sense, maybe an unconscious one, but it was still a choice because I kind of kept rolling with it for a while. There's benefit to it. I must have felt I was getting something from it, right? So
who knows? But at least now you're able to look back at it. Because a lot of people, probably even me, a few years ago, I'd just be like, meh, whatever. And you know what? A lot of people would carry that into today. Yeah, I still remember what you did to my tea towel that I just freshly washed. I have a pile over there I need to go wash. But I'm yeah, whatever. It will get clean when it needs to get clean.
Next Thanksgiving, don't step on the tea towels. That's how you go.
No, like holidays are I don't know, like I kind of, it sucks how it's gotten to a point where holidays are stressful. You get what I'm saying? I feel like there wasn't a time that it was like that. I don't know where this pressure to perform and like, you know, do all these things and to like have these elaborate menus and, you know, everybody kind of pressurized in one setting. People want to do different things at different times. It's a lot, you know? So
That's true. That's true. We have that kind of competitive nature. We're always taught that kind of, we've got to be right. We need to compete. We need to do that. Yeah, that's kind of ingrained in us, I think, too.
right. It's
That's
like
for
even
sure.
like the box of like family time. This is what family time means. Like we have to do it. You know, we all have to be in the kitchen contributing,
Yeah,
doing it
yeah.
the way, you know, I like to. And like, it's just very interesting to kind of look in like, wow, this is how we do things, eh?
Yeah, and it's like this dish has to be in this dish. Like I have to make the peas and mushrooms have to go in the green dish, and this has to go in the white dish. And
Seriously.
what kind of suffering is that creating for everybody around me? Right?
It's honestly, it's really funny because this year, which is usually like we do like a potluck style, obviously like you go to somebody's houses, and this year because COVID is just going crazy. For the first time, my mom like got up and did like all of the cooking, and like, there's only 4 of us here today. So it's just like, we all got to the table and we were like overwhelmed with the amount of food. And like, that is an amazing, experience to have. And like, my mom is like not like a natural born cook. Like she had to, throughout the years, but she was like, I didn't feel stressed out about anything. I didn't do, it was, she just got up on her own and she did it all. So it's just like, whoa, when you see it all laid out, you're like, oh, I taste it. I feel the love. Like it's awesome. And like the best thing about Thanksgiving is leftovers. Like you don't have to cook for the rest of the week,
Yeah, I don't kind of cook that way though, for sure, because we do like vegan meals and stuff. So we don't have the 5-hour turkey that we had to make that, you last for weeks.
Got you. Oh,
yeah,
man.
so it's like we get to be creative in a sense, because it's like when you start trying to substitute things, it just gets fun like that.
No, that could be amazing though. Like you said, vegan lasagna, and I was like, ooh, that could be awesome. Like we had my sister made like this amazing macaroni pie. And I was like, ooh, like I remember my friend made us nachos with like a vegan cheese. And I was like, this is actually pretty impressive. This is something I can get behind, So it's always like, it's really cool to like have these little things introduced. So.
Yeah, that's something like with our family. So everybody has like a tradition, what they do. We all, of course, we do like gratitude around the table, but we also try to look up that what are other people doing? Who else celebrates Thanksgiving, and what are they doing? And so it was kind of cool. There was some really neat ones, like in Korea, they celebrate it for 3 days. They celebrate before, during, and after. So it's like an amazing festival, like, where they're doing all these amazing community events. So I thought that's kind of cool, right? And then something neat about what they do in the States is, I guess, the presidents pardon a turkey every year. They allow one turkey to be set free and live his natural life. And I looked it up to see, is everybody doing this? It's an official thing. In '89 they made it an official thing to do this, and they've kept it going. And Barack Obama did it. I believe they named that turkey Liberty, and it lived the longest.
Wow.
And I looked up, I had to look up, come on, man, did Trump do it? I'm just curious if his heart went out to the turkey. He pardoned the turkey. I'm just saying.
Did he do it though, or did somebody else do it and he like took credit for it?
Well, I don't know about the details, but I'm just saying he didn't get rid of it or anything. He pardoned a turkey. That was pretty cool.
Yo, that's hilarious. I mean,
right?
Some people would question why turkeys need to be pardoned, but I mean, hey,
well, they're freed from, servitude to, I guess, whoever was going to eat them, to human servitude. I don't know what to call it.
That's crazy.
I think it's really cool, though, to me, right?
That is, I've never heard that. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so wait, let me do our little introduction. Hello, listeners. Thank you guys for joining in. with, Shay and Cherie, and we're just humans discussing things. Basically, we talk about, like, this is our weekly podcast sometimes, bi-weekly, weekly podcast
What do they know?
about our mindfulness journey. And we're just basically discussing ways that mindfulness impacts our lives today, doing with what we do. All right, so I'm Shay. What's up, Shay? I hope you introduce our topic today because I have no clue what we're doing.
Oh, you had mentioned you wanted to talk about compassion and self-compassion.
Right. But what I was thinking is that because it was so unique because we kind of had like a flow going and then we both kind of got sick.
Yeah.
And sick enough that we're fact that we kind of like pushed things out. First it started off with scheduling and then I got sick and I know you said you weren't feeling well. So I was just like, that's kind of interesting because, I mean, like it's the change of season. People get sick a lot there's a lot of things going around. This year makes it very special because of COVID. And I would kind of just want to discuss a little bit just about like mindfulness and being sick. I remember like when we were discussing things going back and forth, we were kind of like in the same, like, bubble. Like, I'm like, yo, I have so much crap to do. I have like my productivity should be up here. And I'm like fighting it because I'm feeling literally like crap, could barely speak. Just my chest was just terrible. And my mom's like freaking out, like, oh, you should go get COVID testing. And I'm like, no, I know my body, I'm fine. Plus I have this thing to get done and I'm not leaving this computer. So it was just like very, very interesting. Like knowing that, like, I'm like, yo, and I felt it. You're like, yo, I feel like I'm letting you down and I don't like, I feel bad for you waiting. And it's just like, yo, in that split second, I was just like, oh, this is, here is the lesson for me. Like, I really need to slow down because my body is telling me something. And I know my mind is telling me something too, as it does, as it's supposed to, I thank the mind for that. But sometimes I feel like when, that balance is broken and you go too far over, what I saw happen is that in a sense, like my body just started to break down to the fact that I was like, yeah, you didn't have any more energy just to like eat and just sleep. And after that rest, I was like, oh, that's what it was trying to slow me down to do, So I kept thinking like, wow, I wonder if I was really, really mindful in the beginning, if I would have caught it, if it would have gotten so bad and, maybe things would have flown in a different way. So I'm curious how your experience was, because I know you kind of went through something similar.
Well, yeah, it does tap into self-compassion, right? Because that's, you were understanding and accepting of yourself and where you were at in that moment. That is self-compassion, right? So you, of course, have to have that for yourself before you could have it for me. And then you did have it for me.
The weirdest thing, though, I felt it was me feeling it for you that was the trigger that was like, oh, shoot. Because then I immediately was like, okay, like, if my friend's like, yo, you're telling me you're sick and I'm feeling the exact same way. And I'm like, yo, are you okay? Like, yo, if you need to calm down, like do what you got to do. I'm completely I'll do what you got to do. And I was just like, oh, wow, I am supposed to treat myself like my friend.
That's
and then
awesome.
I was like, oh, okay. I get it.
That's so powerful.
Crazy.
I just love that because it's the same. It's because as soon as you said that, I felt like I had needed to give myself permission because I wasn't really sick. I was not practicing self-compassion. I had worn myself right out. And then, your menstrual cycle comes, like TMI, right? But anyways, that's what happened. And then I was already so worn out by the time that happened that my body just started to, have little symptoms. So that's what I did. I wasn't showing myself self-compassion at all. I thought, okay, I have all this stuff to do, but there's this time when everybody goes to bed, probably about midnight to 2:00. where I can get up and do this personal research I've been doing lately. I've been really excited about a project and diving into it, but I want to have my own time where nobody else can touch it. So yeah, I picked that time, which, maybe not as mindful considering I was getting up at 5. So I was like purposely scheduling my sleep in a small, yeah. So that's what happens over time, right? Your body's going to let you know. And if you ignore it, it's not that I don't see the signs. I see the signs. I thought I can take a little more.
Right.
So push yourself just that little bit more. But that's, that isn't being mindful because then it took me a few days to get back up to speed. And, because I wasn't taking care of myself, I wasn't eating very well, I wasn't sleeping very well, forgetting to hydrate is a huge thing, which I think I sent you a message to hydrate. And again, that was a message to me as well.
That was awesome. And I just said, I was like, oh, yeah. I'm like, wait, I haven't seen my water jug for a very, very long time. I should probably go get something to drink.
Isn't that funny? Oh my gosh. That's so funny. Yeah, but then so that's what happened with me. I was like so then once I was like, okay, it took too many days to recuperate from this. That wasn't necessary. So, I've, gotten a little bit better at scheduling it out.
And that helps your schedule.
Yeah, I can't
keep using
do
that
it.
word now, and I feel like it's
new. It's my buzzword.
What's going? You gotta break that down for me. What's going on with this new word called the schedule?
I know, it's funny to me because I'm so I had kind of identified with, I don't use a schedule. I just flow with time. I don't get time. So that's kind of my personality that I've adopted. So now I would just balk at anybody's idea to put anything on a time schedule, especially having my phone on me with a schedule. I mean, come on, I'm going to have my phone constantly tell me what to do. That's what was my perspective, my judgments, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then instead, Josh made me this great thing where he asked me everything I do in a day, and he listened very mindfully, and then he wrote it all out for me, and he says, it's not going to work. Do you see how this doesn't fit there? Say all the things you have to do. That wasn't even everything. Now take a look. How does this make any sense? This isn't logical. And I was like, oh, I understand the schedule now. I'm looking at all in front of me, and I don't have to judge it as something negative. It just is. It's just a tool. Use it as any tool, right? So now, now that I let go of my preconceived notions of what scheduling meant, nobody's boxing me in or telling me what to do, right? It's just, it's a tool, that can be utilized.
You saying that, it reminds me of, I used to grow up playing sports, and one thing that they're very, very on is my coach used to hammer, discipline. And I'm talking about 5 a.m. workouts outside in the cold. And I'm I'm not one for the cold. I was born in August. I'm not one for the cold. I hate waking up early. I love sleep. And then, to go work out on a field in the morning and then to go through a full day of school, it was just
August 23rd.
Hell. And I remember
Shahadra, is it August 23rd?
No, August 1st.
Okay, go on.
Why?
Sorry.
Where did that come from?
Well, because my birthday is August 25th. So I thought, and then I for some reason remembered somebody's birthday was on the 23rd. I thought it was yours.
Oh, okay. No,
sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
Right. He was just saying, he's like, yo, when a person with discipline will always discipline is the closest thing you have to freedom. Because once you once you do the things that you have to do, you know exactly what you have to do. And then there's freedom in it because it becomes automatic. So it's the weirdest thing as he said that, right? So I would have practice at 5 a.m. and then class would start at 8:10. And I'm not a numbers girl. And I remember them specifically putting me in an 8 a.m. class for mathematics. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail this class. This is going to be terrible. I'm going to get kicked off my team. My life is going to suck. And it was the weirdest thing is when I had those practices and I went into class, my focus was there. I was able to just, be there. And that wasn't just for me. That was my other teammates as well. And I was just yo, maybe this thing really works. And then after school, because, there again is another set of practice. And then when you're on a team outside of school, I had another practice. So I'd go home and I'd be whoa, I have no time, but everything was getting done. I never had a problem with not doing my homework. Everything got done, even though, you get what I'm saying? So I was just oh, I really, really do get it. These are tools that you work the tool and then it starts to work itself. And then you never have to think about it again.
Yeah, it
it's just
only
like,
becomes an issue when you over identify with it and you're making it like, I have to do this at this, I have no bend. You know,
mhm,
if you don't bend with anything, you're not able to adapt. That's the only time it can become problematic, really. But see, it's all perception. I perceived it as
mhm,
this negative thing, therefore it was for me a negative thing,
exactly.
right? And yours was a positive tool. You didn't over
Mhm.
identify with it. It worked for you. And I'm just learning that now.
No, definitely. Like
So
you said, there's pros and cons for it, right? Like even when you think about it in terms of like some medication, where they're like, no, 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 it's important that you take it the same time every day, right? That's
yeah.
not something you want to play with, and that's something that is going to work to your benefit. Even like something like a sleep schedule works really, really well for a majority of people. And you know what? Not every day you're going to have time to be in bed by 10 a.m. or
Yeah.
10 p.m. You have to allow for that. And your body is pretty forgiving. It will adjust. But when you start to kind of, in a sense, push your body's boundaries, when you're on, nobody drives a tank. You can't drive your car far on E. Everybody
Yeah.
knows that you gotta find somewhere very soon or you're gonna be stranded. So it's like the same thing. I hate to compare my body to like, some mechanics.
But it makes so much sense though, right? Like you don't know what's going to blow on that car, but it's going to be something.
Absolutely. And it's like that's like this, those are the basics. There's very basic things that you need. You need to check your tires, you need to check your gas, right?
Mhm.
Those are the two big things. And if you don't, guess what? You can only get so far.
That's
So it's
it.
just like, oh, all these little lessons are in it. And that was a lesson that I had like, to be honest, I'm not a person who gets sick often. I'm noticing, looking back, it's like, oh, I get sick when I keep pushing my own boundaries. Like you said, those signs are always there. And it's just, you drive over a pebble and your car goes boom, boom. And then you're like, okay, whatever. And you're still concentrating on going 100. And all of a sudden you hit something bigger and you're like, boom, boom. And you're just like, oh, uh-oh, what's going on? Yo, you hit a pothole going at 100, you will mess up your car. Trust me, those are expensive because I just got a bill for one. So it's just like, life is like, it's like it whispers and then it like yells and it's like, okay, like
Yes, that's what mindfulness gives us, the ability to notice the subtle lessons before it's the hit like that, right?
wake yourself
Because
up.
you're going to get it.
You will. And then even like you said, it can turn into a situation where you're like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. Like I did this.
And there's
And
the
you're just like,
layered judgments, like layering the judgments, judging your judgments. And now it's like,
right. So now it's like, okay, now you have a broken car and now you have like essentially like a broken, shattered ego and soul. And it's
yeah.
just like, oh, one has to fix the other. And if you say, okay, you know what, my behavior hasn't been, on par with what I want to be. Oh, okay, I can change my behavior. You know, this week you think I'm going to be stressing myself out to get things done? Maybe, probably, maybe.
It's a
But
moment by moment thing, right?
it's not gonna. I don't see it getting to that point. You get what I'm saying? Especially
Yeah.
like Corona's out there, and it's just like us wearing down our immune systems in a time like now. It's the wrong move on so many boards. Like I was so concerned about my productivity, and it's like, listen, in the words of my sister, yeah, well, when you're a dead man doesn't have problems, and if you want to push it there, you know those things won't get done if you're in bed for a week. So take your time, do it bit by bit, and it will all get done. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
When
got to
you,
binge Netflix for a little bit. Awesome.
yeah, when you reach that part inside you that's, more, that's bigger, and you realize that you have the space between things, those little things aren't as important anymore, right? You've given yourself that realization. It's just not that important that the tea towel hit the floor. It's just not that important that the dishes are going to get done. They're not all completely done. Well, what does that mean? It just means it gets done in another moment, the next moment, right? So
But
yeah, I hear
why do you
you.
think in that moment it was so important? Was it over identification? Was it just like, out of fear? Like what can you even put a name to it?
Yeah, it had nothing to do with the scenario. That's why I was saying this can become very layered, and it's not maybe necessary to know the root, but in this instance, I happened to know the root was a project I was doing in the basement. I was having trouble with it. I'm building a wall, and it's taking some time and getting all the parts together for it, and doing the measuring, and I have to measure like 400 times because I get distracted. So
Okay.
this is
Sorry,
where my,
sorry,
this is
you're
where my,
building a wall?
yeah, I'm building a wall. So this is just the
Okay.
stuff I do. So yeah,
In
so
your house?
yeah, in the basement, I'm just building a
Okay.
little wall, like a little, it's like a, it's just a little wall. But yeah, so anyways, it's just a square. It's going to be, it's a hard project. It's just a time consuming one by yourself. So that's where my mind was all about this, because those projects that I do, the building projects, are what I use. Those are my distractions. That's where I, work mindfully, work with power tools and stuff like that. It keeps me really centered and focused. I find it a very mindful practice, is soothing. So I soothe myself with these building projects, and then you get the sense of accomplishment because I've started something and finished it. Because you see, most of the stuff I work with, it never is going to get done. This gives me a small experience of something getting done. So that's where my whole thought was at. That's where I wanted my free time to be, not arguing about petty little things. You have two teenage daughters. You can get a lot of the drama building up and going, and my judgments were that the conversations weren't important. Somehow much more important was me getting some time to go into the basement and work on my project. Didn't matter about the tea towel, or about the fake nails that were coming off all over the kitchen from my daughter, or the all the little things, the little triggers, had nothing to do with them and had nothing to do with those circumstances. All about what I really wanted to be doing. So
You
that's the
weren't in that
truth.
moment, essentially.
No,
Is
I
that fair
was
to say?
not at all. I was caught up in the thought, completely caught up in the I want to be in the basement, quite quite a little tantrum inside over I want to be in the basement.
That's like you're alone. That's your happy place,
That particular project was my happy place for that moment, and I couldn't get to it and get that satisfaction, so I kind of took it out on everybody around me.
Hmm. No,
So
that's mad cool. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't even know you were into power tools and building walls. I'm like, wait, what? A wall for what? Like what? Wait, what's
oh,
going on?
I built that enclosure for the
Oh,
tortoise.
okay. That's
Well,
cool.
built.
That's mad cool.
Yeah, I took apart some band equipment. There's for moving band equipment. And I got really cheap, like $25 for all this stuff, and then I converted it into an enclosure for the black plated lizard and the tortoise. It was so
Ooh.
much fun and so calming for me. And then people use TV a lot of times, but I find TV is triggering for me because I'm endlessly analyzing it. And
Okay.
I use it as a tool, as almost like I'm researching, but then it's contrary to how people would normally act in situations. So I'm analyzing. So I'm not fun to watch TV with for others.
Got you. Got you.
So
Well, that's the thing.
yeah,
It depends how everybody has their activities. That's really cool though,
right.
because creativity, like you said, if that's what puts you in that flow state, if that's what keeps you in the moment, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
that's also that's the mindfulness right there, finding the things that are soothing to you. Like one girl I know, she has some issues getting out of bed, and she's a young girl. She's younger than me, and she's a beautiful, vibrant, lovely woman. She's just great, and she doesn't get to leave her home very often, so she does come on Zoom for our mindfulness sessions, which is nice sometimes to see her. But she does these diamond paintings where it's mindfully taking tiny little diamonds with tweezers and laying them on a picture, and until she does this giant canvas of multicolored visuals. It's just unbelievable, and I'm like, wow, that's her mindfulness exercise. It's just stunning, right?
That I feel the energy that feels beautiful. And like you said, there's always that moment that you can see the completion of it and it just does something to you and you're like, oof,
Yeah.
That's awesome. I hope I hope she shares it. I hope she
Yeah.
puts it out there. Share that art with
I'll
people.
send you the YouTube. She's got it on YouTube. I first saw that, and seeing how painstaking that would be, like that would be my judgment, that it would be painstaking, but for her it's pure joy. Yeah.
See, it's crazy how, like, you know, people are like, oh, you know, capitalism needs to be what it is because then we'd all end up doing nothing. And it's like, no, people are so different that they'll find, you know, the thing that resonates with them the most. And like, you know, I would never want to probably do something like that, but you know, for her, I could still appreciate it. I love beauty. I love art. I'm down for that stuff. Like, I will never do a painting, but I will spend hours in a gallery. You get what I'm saying? I will spend money on memberships and all of that stuff because I can really appreciate that. And like me, like, you know, going back to gratitude, like, thank the artist who, you know, didn't listen to the person who's like, you know, because even if I was your friend, I'd be like, please don't waste your time doing that. Nobody has don't waste 3 hours of your day doing that. And you're just like, why not? Why rob somebody the opportunity to see, you know, to go through that and see on the other side? Like, even with kids on like video games, they're like, oh, you know, my cousin growing up used to kill video games. Kill it. Yo, there's multimillionaires under 17 because of playing video games right now as we speak. Right now as we speak, there's, you know, there's an esports tournament going on. Somebody's about to win a lot of money for spending all this time playing video games.
Right.
And it's just like, yo, if that's what puts them in the zone and that, you know, that's what makes them happy to be alive, why not?
Yeah, right. It's all about balance, and, you know, again, making sure you're taking care of yourself. As long as there's balance, and whatever you're, you know, into, that's great.
True that, true that, true that, true that. So
Yeah, I make
self-compassion.
this joke. Yeah, I make this joke to my kids. Well, it's not really a joke. I shouldn't say that. But I say, like try to contradict it. Okay? So if I say I only live by one rule, it's essentially two, but it's kind of one. Make sure that it is healthy for me and others. Is it healthy for me and others? So it's kind of like two, because is it healthy for me and others? But it's all about that. So no matter what you say or do, you don't need like tons and tons of rules, just that one rule. If you follow that, you'd probably be pretty balanced. And my kids are always trying to get me on that, but you can't, because I'll say, oh, what you just said, is that healthy for you? Would that be healthy for me and others? And they're like, oh no, right? Like, so I don't know.
Got you.
It's like
Okay.
internal dialogue matters like so much, the stuff we're saying to ourselves, you know. That's where the self-compassion, like I find that the root is usually our internal dialogue, the experiences we've had, and then the things we say to ourselves repeatedly, right? That's just growing whatever we're saying. So if we're saying something, you know, that isn't healthy for us, we're growing that.
Yes, what they say, where you, what is it? Where you put your attention, or what is the quote? It's like, where you put your attention, the energy flows, or
Yeah.
where your energy flows, it grows, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you really want to make sure that you're watering the right plants, you know?
Beautifully put. That's for sure.
What was I gonna say? Oh, with regards to, I really like your quote, right? And it made me kind of just think about this other quote where it was like, okay, I think it was, I don't know, some poet, Google it, where he's just like, my only rule is, do I love it? And if the answer is yes, then I do it.
Oh,
And if the
that's so
answer is
good.
no, then I don't. And I was like, oh, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah, that's good.
like something so simple. But for a lot of the things, and I think this is trauma related. Again, I'm not like a medical professional, so I'm just stating my opinion. But what you run into is a lot of people don't know what they love. A lot of people can't answer that question. When you even ask them what do they want, you know, even for myself, I struggled with this for a very, very long time. And I couldn't answer that. And I remember thinking like, you know what, you know, growing up in my age, it was like the hustle era, right? You couldn't have like a hobby. We never had hobbies, you know. I was too poor to have a hobby. You had to have a side hustle. You had to have a third hustle. You had to know, you know, everything that you did had to be tied to your productivity. It had to be tied to your income. And in a sense, it just stripped me, you know, layer by layer, to the fact that I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I don't, Nothing brings me joy anymore. The things that I thought would bring me joy, it just didn't feel like it. Back to your topic about balance. I loved basketball so much with all my heart, to the fact that it got to a point, and I'll credit it to this one coach that I had, where he drilled us like before school, during lunch break, after school, 7 days a week, right? We got to rest on Sunday because they were Catholic. And I hated it by the end of it. I ended up quitting. And it was just like, I just remember saying, this isn't fun for me anymore. And then I didn't pick up a basketball that day. I quit for the longest time until not too recently. You get what I'm saying? And I was just whoa, like me just holding the ball, like not even shooting it. It was just like, oh, like, what's that feeling? I couldn't even name it. Like, this feels different. You're holding it and you're like, it's rubber gripped, and it's like, whoa, like all these like thoughts came flooding. And like, I remember when, like, I'm very like auditory, like I love sound. So when I shot it and it hit the net and it makes that very particular sound that you don't hear anywhere else, it just did something to me. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do this as often as I can. And I was just like, oh, I found it, like it was like a light, and it's like, I'm on my way home, to finding those things that I love. And like, I'll be honest, I suck at basketball. Ask anybody who knows me. Like, I'm terrible at it. For as long as I played, I am freaking terrible at it. And there's another quote where it's like, oh, you know what? If your mind tells you, he's like, it was specifically for painting. He's like, if your mind tells you cannot paint, then paint and let that part of your mind be silenced, even if it's terrible. And I was just like, that's it. If I want to write a poem, I promise myself to write shitty poetry. Excuse my language. If I'm going to play basketball, I promise to hit every single air ball in style, like I'm, Kobe Bryant or something.
I'll mess with you.
Like, if I want to do it, if I get that feeling, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Because that's again our culture, like teaching kids to be so competitive, and like kind of stripping down the real kind of point of what you were learning wasn't competition, wasn't who's better at it. So you had to put the good feeling emotion back in there, because that's changing the emotion you felt. That's really amazing. You had that space from it, realize that was somebody else's opinion of that sport. That wasn't the emotion you felt. Once you got that sound and it brought that sensation and that, the good memories back, the feeling of, oh yeah, this is what I loved. I love this story. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. I'm like,
you brought it out. I didn't even mean to tell that story today, but it just totally had to be on topic.
I want to go play basketball right now.
No, it's just like, like you said, do what you love. Find that thing that you love. If it's helpful, do it. If you love it, do it. And that is the only thing I want to share with you guys today.
Yeah, I had a compassion quote that I looked for one. I don't have the author though, just that it says American author, but I love this. It's simple. It's not your job to like me, it's mine.
Ooh, that's so true.
I love it. It's so simple and very true, right? Why would that be your job?
My therapist told me a while back, he's like, how do you define self-esteem? I'm like, I don't know, like, what people, and I remember saying what people, and he's like, no. Self-esteem is about you. What do you feel about yourself? I was like, oh, okay. I get it now. Like that, growing your self-esteem is your own job. You can't give me self-esteem. I can give myself self-esteem. And that's not your responsibility. It's my responsibility. And, these are all just lessons you're going to get at different times. I'm sure I'm going to forget it one day, and,
And it's exciting to rediscover it again anyway, so.
And that's how life is. I feel like it's not even necessarily like a circle. It's like a spiral where you come to certain like lessons and you got to learn them sometimes 2 or 3 times, but you'll get them eventually. And like you said, there's beauty in the rediscovery. And if it makes you feel like you're brand new,
And to not be too
Right.
attached to it all, because we're all about change. And, that's what's kind of cool about even this, where we put our opinions out there. And sometimes we can get strong about our opinions, but guess what? Not attached to any of it. I could have this conversation again 2 weeks from now. I bet you I'm a different person 2 weeks from now.
Absolutely. And that's part of me. I'm like, yo, record it, because, I could probably change my mind by like tomorrow. And tomorrow I might be like, you know what? I'm this person today, and I'm just going with it. But
That's right. That's perfect.
It's all tentative. It's all, who cares? I mean, like, as long as like my intention's not to hurt anybody, my intention's not to harm anybody. And if I ever, cross those boundaries, please let me know. This is all about growth. This is about showing the journey. And literally that's all I can do. Like, I can just kind of give you a window into my own opinion, and me sharing with you, like, we're learning from each other.
Oh, for sure.
And
growing, the expansion, every conversation, I'm very grateful for it. So thank you for you, Shahadra.
I love that. I'm so grateful for you too. Like, even I'm like, yo, are we gonna have time to do it? Like, I'm thinking of all the million things, and it's like, when we get into it, it's just like,
yeah,
that will get done. And to be honest, I feel like I'm gonna be even more effective, because for me, like, there's a part of it, there's like a connection where it's just kind of like, it just satisfies your soul. And once that's filled out, like, that's, that gas tank is ready, it's revving, you're filled up with that premium gas, you can drive 1,000 kilometers on that.
That's awesome.
So thank you so much for having this conversation to me. Did you want to
thank
add
you.
any last stories, any last closing remarks on some self-compassion, love, anything?
Okay, here's one quote I can end on. It is by Emerson. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you like someone else is an accomplishment.
Absolutely.
Because I really appreciate who you are, your individuality. I know we're all one. There's no separation. I feel that. But I mean, you're so unique, and your perspective is so appreciated. So yeah, that's why I picked that quote. So thank you.
That's very beautiful. I gotta hold that in my heart. Like, that makes me feel like, that's giving me the feels. No, I really appreciate that. And like I said, weekly, thank you to whoever else is listening in on us. Like,
or nobody, we're cool with that too.
No, hey, it's cool. If you want to say something, say something. If not, it's all good. I appreciate, the love. I feel like you said, it's all, what will happen will happen.
Yeah, and it'll be perfect as is.
Exactly. And as long as I love having conversations with you, I'm going to keep having conversations with you. It's that simple.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So awesome. I will leave you back to your schedule. I know you have to get back to your scheduled program. But thank you so much for joining me this week. Hopefully we will talk again next week. Block me in your schedule. And
that's awesome.
It will be another discussion. All right.
Okay.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.